From March 1st, 1945 to August 1946, I was in naval hospitals. The problem was not with the healing my legs. The problem was I wasn't evacuated until the morning of March 3rd, and gangrene had set in, and I'm allergic to penicillin, and it took years to clear up the gangrene. There are a lot of questions that people ask me. One, I went on to a very fruitful life. The one question people invariably ask, and I answer, and I tell them I have 3 children and 7 granddaughters, and none of them are adopted. So things worked out in that department. And 55 years after, I was invited back to Iwo Jima by the History Channel. They were doing a documentary, and they asked me and other Marines to meet with the Iwo Jima survivors. I wish the Japanese Americans were here, because I want to tell you, before that, I wouldn't eat Japanese food. I wouldn't go to a Japanese restaurant. My wife belonged to a hospital auxiliary, and they were having a fundraising event, and it was a Japanese tea motif. I wouldn't go. They changed it. I went back to Japan, and they asked if you have any personalized souvenirs. And remember that box that I took from the dead Japanese? It was a mahogany box. You slid it open. Inside were a set of chopsticks, ivory chopsticks, and a little gold Buddha, and his name was on top of it, and his hometown. I took a picture of it. I gave it to Warren Weedham, who you'll meet later on. He sent it on ahead, and lo and behold, the fellow's grandson came, and I presented it to him. And I met 11 Japanese survivors and I saw that they were human, little, old, nice gentlemen, and I had some closure. People ask me, would I go back and do it again? I say, yes, I would. Would I let my son do it? Absolutely not. I was on Iwo Jima 10 days, and it isn't one day that goes by that I don't think of Iwo Jima and Jimmy Trimble. Thank you.
No?
Why don't you stand up?
You gotta stand up?
No, you don't have to, but see if it works.
Is this thing working now? Yeah. Okay. When I was asked to first come into this group and speak, they asked me to tell personal things that I did in this particular battle. So I had to I sent in a synopsis of what I was going to say. And they said, well, that was fine. Keep it short. Well, I know it's time for chow for some of you people. But if you can imagine this group of people right here between this aisle, that's what it looked like that night when these Japs come after us. It was 5 Japanese. Excuse me. That's politically incorrect, I guess. So when all hell broke loose, it was midnight. It was 5 after 12. And these guys come, just like a group about as big as this, come over these ridges, come out of their caves from behind, come up these paths, and right over the top where we were. And if you can imagine, sitting here, that's about what it looked like. They were shooting flares. They started shooting flares to see where they were going. And our guy that was in charge was killed right away. So there was no officers, nobody around, So I started using my head, a common sense thing. So I said, anybody can hear me, contact those mortars and send them up so we can see them coming. I gave the password, and I said it 3 times. If you don't answer, I'm going to shoot everything moving. And I waited, I said 3 times, and nobody answered the cosign, and I started blazing away. And all I had was an M1, 8 shots, and I probably shouldn't tell this, but one of our guys, the guy that had my shell hole, forgot his rifle. So I'm practically alone. He had a .45 that he picked up off a dead officer, and when we broke up that night on top of this ridge with our outpost, he forgot about his rifle. Well, it was dark by the time we picked out a place, and I picked out a shell hole down the bottom of the thing. I said, I'm not going to dig anything. There's a nice sandy shell hole there. So here I am there alone practically, and all these guys coming at me. Well, I wasn't afraid or anything, but I'd seen combat in Guam and shot a few guys, so it didn't bother me any, but I started shooting. And at one shot, so all I took, and these guys were dropping like flies, just falling, just as fast as I could. So Blanchard, I used his ammo, and he'd hand me a clip like this, and I'd pat it in there in about 2 seconds. Well, it was a good thing we had a lull once in a while, because that rifle got so hot, it was the metal was expanding, and it was getting hard to pull that trigger. So they'd stop, and we'd stop with the flares, give us a breather, and pretty soon they started coming again. And this went on all night long. And in the course of this thing, I heard this sound like one of our guys. This bird here. He was howling, giving the cosign of the password. And I said to Blanchard, I said, I think that's one of our guys. We better go get him. So we crawled over there, and here he was. He was a bloody mess. Of course, his hand grenade landed in, and I didn't think to ask him if family jewels were safe, but I asked him 50 years later. He said, yeah, I've got 3 children. Okay. But he was a mess. Blood all over it, and blew his trousers. And when I finally did see him, it was at a reunion in about 1997. The first thing I asked him, I was going to ask him, and he said, I suppose you want to see how you patch me up. He drops his drawers, and here was all his meat missing on his thighs. And it was gray, and there's still some sand in it, stuff like that. So that was the first time we met in a lot of years. And I had a lot of things to say to him, because I didn't know what happened to him. I patched him up the best I could. I saw 2 corpsmen coming up, calling for corpsmen, and they both separately got shot by the Japanese. You'd see these guys crawling, they could tell it was a corpsman, because they usually didn't carry a rifle. They all carried a .45, but they carried this little bag with, their first aid kit. Finally, one got through. A third one come, and you give him, and all this is going on, and I'm shooting these guys, bang, 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 right and left, just as fast as I could possibly do it. And they all seem to drop. Well, he got as close as right now, right from here. I dropped a couple of them, their hand was over the hole. So I'd wait till they got right on top of me, and one good blaze and ready to go. So this went on all night. It finally we got a corpsman and come in, and the first thing he did was give him a shot of morphine. Well, I calmed him down. But before that happened, I told these 2 guys in the hole with me, I said, Blanchard wasn't a whiner or anything, but he went on to, after the war, to do great things in the Marine Corps. Retired a lieutenant colonel. He was a pilot in Vietnam. He did great things, but lived in that foxhole that night. He was younger than I was, and I was 18. I just turned 19. And I told him, you either be quiet, especially Don here, or I'm going to knock you out. I'm going to sock you a good one. Well, he did his best to keep quiet. And Blanchard was known. I said to Blanchard, and I've forgotten about this till Donna reminded me 50-some years later. The last thing I remember was you told Blanchard, save 3 cartridges in that .45, because we're not going to be taken prisoner. Well, I did it really. I never would have done something like that. I was quite a religious guy, and it was against my principles to commit suicide and all that.